Okay, let's unpack this. We're not just talking about art today. I want you to picture this scene. We are walking into a moment of pure, white-hot commercial spectacle.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a packed auction room. It could be Tokyo, could be New York, doesn't matter. The lighting is intense, the phones are, ringing off the hook.
Right.
And the tension is so thick you can practically feel it. The collective adrenaline of collectors just determined not to lose.
And then the gavel drops.
Exactly. The gavel drops. And a single painting, not some classical oil from the 17th century, but a picture of a wide-eyed, kind of grumpy-looking girl sells for a figure that makes headlines everywhere.
We're talking nearly $1 million. Sometimes, way more.
Way more.
And that sale, it wasn't just a sale. It was more like a detonation inside the global art market.
A detonation. I like that.
That one moment and all the record-breaking sales that followed,
Yeah.
it really solidified Yoshitomo Nara as the most expensive living Japanese artist.
Right.
And it forced the entire global art establishment, which, can be pretty skeptical of artists with pop culture roots.
Oh, for sure.
It forced them to just completely reset how they saw contemporary Japanese art and, frankly, its commercial power.
Exactly. And that is our mission for this deep dive. We're not just here to admire what he paints, those instantly recognizable, often a little bit menacing, but also profoundly adorable children.
Mm-hmm.
We're diving into the complex mechanics of why. Why is his work such an explosive cultural and commercial force? We're looking for that perfect storm.
It's the synergy of it all. The design, the deep emotional resonance, and, this incredibly savvy market strategy that turned this quiet artist from Aomori into a global icon.
It's the ultimate convergence study, right? We have to go beyond just the look of it and understand the technical visual language he so carefully built.
We do. How did this simple, really accessible style manage to connect with so many different cultures?
Yeah.
From, punk rock collectors in Berlin to serious investment bankers in Hong Kong.
And at the same time, command the highest prices in the most elite auction houses in the world.
Yeah. We are charting that whole journey, from a doodle in a punk scene to a multi-million-dollar blue-chip investment.
So let's start right there, where the money hits the canvas. The spectacle of value.
Okay.
That auction buzz, that high-tension, rapid-fire environment we just described, it wasn't an accident. It reflects this major kind of deliberate shift in how Japanese contemporary art is seen internationally.
Especially post-2000.
Right.
Yeah.
For years, Nara was a cult favorite. You'd see his prints in, alternative bookstores or cool design shops.
Yeah, you would.
But now, collectors see him not just as this cultural icon, but as a genuinely serious, reliable investment.
That transition from cult favorite to blue-chip asset, that's where design and economics really intersect.
How so?
Well, when we talk about the art market, especially for living artists, we're basically talking about the dynamics of scarcity and exclusivity. The research draws this fantastic, really accessible comparison. Nara's market operates almost exactly like limited edition high-end sneakers.
Okay, I love that. So it's about hype.
It's hype, it's calculated rarity, and it's controlled supply. Only, instead of leather and rubber, you're dealing with canvas and acrylic.
I want to dig into that scarcity model a little bit more because it seems so crucial to understanding the price tag. How exactly is that supply controlled? Is it just about restricting the number of big paintings?
That's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Yeah.
His market success is a testament to this meticulous management of his primary output.
The big canvases.
With the big canvases.
Yeah.
The large-scale oil or acrylic paintings, the ones that fetch 7-8 figures, they are exceedingly rare. His production rate for those is very calculated. It's slow.
Okay.
And that restraint ensures that when a major canvas does hit the secondary market, it's treated like a global event.
A must-have item.
Totally. And even though he does produce editions, prints, lithographs, things like that, those are also released in highly limited numbers and often through very specific, exclusive channels.
So there's a hierarchy.
There's a carefully structured hierarchy. You have the unique, massive painting at the top, then the limited edition prints, and then way down at the bottom, the more affordable merchandise. And this whole structure maintains this constant state of high demand for the most exclusive pieces. The scarcity is what drives the investment value.
And what's so fascinating about his actual painting technique is the paradox it presents to the collector. The figure itself looks so spontaneous, right? Almost dashed off like a doodle a board student would make.
Yeah, it has that energy.
But when you get up close to his large-scale paintings, they actually have this amazing, almost unsettling, calculated restraint. And that's what gives the collector confidence.
That control is absolutely crucial. It's crucial for market legitimacy and for investment potential.
Right.
Because if the piece felt purely spontaneous, the work risks being labeled as, just illustrative or juvenile.
Oh, it's just a cartoon.
Exactly. But analysts have noted that when you examine the surface, the brushwork,
Hmm.
particularly the background, and the way he layers the skin tones,
Hmm.
it is incredibly deliberate. It's almost clinical.
Clinical, wow.
There's a discipline there, a level of technical precision that completely contrasts with the subject. It's a foundational control that underpins the apparent chaos of the emotion.
Can you break that down a bit? The visual effect of that restraint. Why does that disciplined brushstroke matter so much to a wealthy collector who's about to spend $1 million?
Well, the precision elevates the work.
Hmm.
It takes it beyond illustration and puts it firmly in the realm of fine art, tying it back to the traditional European painting methods he studied.
Ah, okay.
I mean, take the skin tones on the children. They're not just flat colors. They often involve multiple, thin, almost translucent layers of paint. That creates this inner luminosity,
So there's a depth to it.
a real depth. And that technique takes time, and it takes an incredible amount of control. This visible technical weight gives the artwork a kind of gravitas. It assures the buyer they're acquiring a meticulously crafted object, not just a quickly drawn pop image. And that distinction is vital for long-term investment.
Which brings us directly to the psychology of the bid, which you could argue is a performance art in itself.
Oh, absolutely.
There's this wonderful anecdote from one of the auction analysis reports. It's about a collector who confessed they were buying a Nara painting specifically for the resale value. The classic cold investor mindset.
Right, purely a numbers game.
But at the same time, they were staring wistfully at the girl's scowl, almost hoping she would blink or wink back at them.
That is the perfect encapsulation of what fuels this market, that duality.
It's everything, isn't it?
You have the cold, calculating investor brain focused on market appreciation, right next to the genuine, almost nostalgic emotional pull of the viewer who sees their own childhood angst in that scowl.
And when that collective emotional excitement takes over in the room, when multiple bidders feel that same rush.
That's when things get crazy. Analysts suggest prices can be driven 20 to 30% above the initial logical estimated values.
And that's how you see records get broken so quickly. It's less about a logical step-by-step appraisal and much more about that shared emotional fever in the moment.
Absolutely. And the media spectacle around these records just creates this powerful feedback loop that accelerates the whole process.
Tell me more about that.
Well, the cameras are flashing, right? There's immediate social media chatter, news reports screaming new record. It instantly turns his work into both a highly desirable cultural icon and a high-stakes, globally recognized commodity.
It's like high-level pop culture. Everyone wants a piece.
But the real thrill is the exclusivity. Who gets the one-of-a-kind original?
Our sources frame this so perfectly. They say the entire auction process becomes a kind of performance art. The auctioneer, the bidders, the artwork itself, they all co-create this moment that is so ephemeral it lasts just seconds.
But it's historically significant for the market's future.
Yeah.
Which, of course, leads us to the ongoing academic debate. And it is fierce.
Okay.
There are critics who argue very strongly that this level of commercialization and financial speculation actually diminishes the pure artistic value of Nara's work.
So they're saying it becomes a status symbol.
Exactly. They contend that turning these complex, subtle emotional narratives into mere status symbols just reduces their meaning to a simple marker of wealth.
Well, wait, isn't that a dangerous argument? I mean, if commercial success is what proves artistic value, doesn't that just tie all artistic merit to the market? What about brilliant artists who are critically lauded but commercially ignored?
And that is the crux of the friction in the contemporary art world. That critique is absolutely valid.
Yeah.
If we only value what the market tells us to, we risk losing sight of quieter, non-commercial voices.
Right.
However, the counterpoint, which a lot of scholars find equally compelling, defends Nara's position.
And what's that?
They argue that this commercial success is actually proof of a genuine, universal appeal. They say that the very ability to straddle that line, to maintain such intense emotional resonance while also being a high-stakes commodity, is in itself an artistic achievement of the highest order in our hyper-commercialized world.
So the art speaks loud enough that even when it's wrapped in $1 million price tag, its core message, that big-eyed child-provoking nostalgia and unease, is still accessible enough to pass the ultimate test.
And that accessibility is what fuels the bidding wars. It's a compelling, if very complex situation.
To really understand the power of that iconography, though, we have to rewind. We need to strip away the auction house and go back to where the story and the scowl really began.
Back in the beginning.
Yeah, and that means going far away from the bright lights of Tokyo to Nara's early life in Aomori in northern Japan. Our research really emphasizes this quiet foundational environment. How did this specific kind of isolated setting shape his visual language?
Aomori is crucial. I mean, it's a city known for heavy snow, its closeness to nature, and its cultural distance from, bustling hubs like Tokyo or Osaka.
So he was isolated.
He was subject to a certain kind of isolation, yeah. And that environment fostered this keen sense of internal observation. It led to the development of minimalist expressive forms. When external stimuli, like imported pop culture, did arrive.
Like records or magazines.
Exactly. They were these rare, curated events. It forced him to focus very deeply on their content.
So instead of being overwhelmed by a constant media stream, he had this slow trickle of influence, which created this unique, curated internal world for him.
That's right. And design experts note that the cultural context an artist grows up in, subtly but powerfully, informs everything: their color palette, their composition, their character design.
So in Aomori, he wasn't looking at massive billboards?
No, he was looking at quiet streets, small shops, and the internal landscape of his own imagination. This led him to a style that had to be direct and immediate to convey emotion, hence the simplified, focused compositions.
And this leads us right to that amazing tension in his influences, the famous punk manga tension.
The great juxtaposition.
On one hand, you have this quiet, almost austere local Japanese environment. On the other, you have this fierce, loud obsession with imported Western rock bands. The Sex Pistols, the Ramones. He was reportedly just drawing their chaotic logos and album covers constantly.
And it's that friction that creates the spark. Scholars are still, deeply engaged in debating this. Is the core of that cute yet defiant look in his mature work rooted more in traditional Japanese manga or in this potent underground Western music culture?
It's the tension between innocence and rebellion.
It's the absolute key to his early experimentation. The child figure represents the innocence, and the punk aesthetic, the anti-establishment vibe, the stark graphics, that represents the pure abrasive rebellion. This is where the synthesis begins.
But it's not just a clever concept. That blend is backed by some serious technical mastery, rooted in traditional Japanese techniques. The source material highlights his strong, early understanding of negative space.
Yes, and this is a fundamental principle in traditional Japanese art, especially painting and printmaking.
Right.
Negative space isn't just empty air. It's a deliberate compositional element. It's used to create balance, emphasis, dramatic effect. By leaving vast areas of the canvas empty, Nara achieves that striking impact we see in his work.
So it forces your eye onto the subject.
It forces your eye to focus intensely on that small, central subject. By giving the artwork what you might call breathing room, his figures feel both contained and somehow expansive at the same time.
So his early toolkit successfully balanced visual simplicity from these traditional techniques with the emotional complexity he got from the raw energy of rock album art.
That's the synthesis.
Yeah.
And we can't ignore the major cultural subversion he achieved. We have to talk about kawaii culture because he completely redefined it.
Yes. For anyone who might not know, kawaii literally means cute or lovable in Japanese, but it's an aesthetic that defines so much of contemporary Japanese consumer culture. Usually it's associated with pastel innocence and harmlessness.
That definition is crucial because Nara took that traditional concept and deliberately, actively flipped it.
He turned it on its head.
He turned the expected sweetness into something darker, more rebellious, and frankly, more psychologically complex. His characters don't have that bubblegum sweetness. They have these sly expressions, subtle scowls, and eyes that are deeply unsettling and knowing.
So he kept the visual shorthand of cute, but injected it with mature angst.
Exactly.
Why should we care about that specific subversion? Why is that more powerful than just adopting traditional cuteness?
Because that blend captures an emotion that is immediately relatable. That feeling of the rebellious inner child, the defiance against what's expected. But it's delivered in this visually familiar, almost childish package, which makes it slightly alien and really memorable. That duality is what makes his work instantly recognizable and emotionally sticky, no matter what culture you're from.
And there's still a debate about it.
Oh yeah, the ongoing critical debate is this a genuine critique of contemporary Japanese society and its obsession with mandated cuteness? Or was it just a brilliant aesthetic choice to gain market traction?
Either way, it worked.
Undeniably.
And his academic background wasn't just a brief stop. His time at Aichi Prefectural University of Fine Arts and Music involved real focused experimentation with printmaking and painting. That gave him the technical chops.
It did, but he never lost his punk, street sensibilities.
Right.
And the ability to synthesize those two streams, formal training and street influence, that's the mark of a truly unique artist. There's that cool kid bit in the source material about a punk scene he illustrated.
Oh, yeah, tell us about that.
He literally juxtaposed these sweet, wide-eyed children with chaotic, almost graffiti-like backgrounds. This wasn't just playing around. This was a literal visual synthesis of his formal academic training in composition with his underground street fascinations.
So these early low-stakes exercises laid the groundwork.
Art historians say they were essential for the polished, iconic style we see today.
And finally, we just have to acknowledge the pervasive structural influence of manga and anime on his raw visual language.
Absolutely. Manga and anime gave him this ready-made visual vocabulary. The simplified lines, the exaggerated expressions, the emotionally charged eyes.
That was his starting point.
That was his starting point. He mastered that language, the instant readability, but then he twisted it. He adapted it into his own distinct dialect. From a design perspective, it's a masterclass in adaptation.
How so?
He retained the immediacy that made manga so successful, but then he added layers of personal narrative and psychological depth that made his characters his own. He transformed them from genre tropes into these original, complex figures.
After absorbing all those local and countercultural Japanese influences, Nara took the essential next step for any major global artist: the journey west.
Right.
His immersion in Western art scenes in the late 80s and 90s, first the US, then specifically Europe, was pivotal. It didn't just expose him to new art, it gave him the conceptual framework to make his simple figures carry heavier psychological weight.
Yeah, when he traveled, he was actively seeking out that raw, urban energy in these established artistic movements. In New York, for example, he was exposed to the vibrant scene of graffiti, punk street art, and crucially, the clean, bold, reproducible aesthetic of pop art icons like Andy Warhol.
So that exposure fused the clean, readable lines of pop art, that flatness and directness,
With the confrontational, anti-establishment energy of punk,
Yeah.
and that combination just amplified the confrontational aspects of his characters.
So pop art taught him to simplify and repeat,
Right.
and punk taught him to scowl and shout.
Precisely. Pop art gave him the structural clarity, but the European leg of his journey, that provided the psychological depth.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
While he was in Germany studying at the prestigious Kunstakademie Dusseldorf, the influence wasn't just aesthetic, it was profoundly psychological. He developed this deep fascination with German expressionism figures like Emil Nolde and Ernst Ludwig Kirchner.
The Expressionists were an absolute turning point. These specialized in raw, intense emotionality. They used unsettling, non-naturalistic colors and often aggressive, jagged brushstrokes to convey inner turmoil rather than objective reality.
So it's about the feeling, not the look.
Exactly. And Nara absorbed this conceptual framework. He realized he could use the structure of the German Expressionists to inject this profound emotional weight into his deceptively simple figures.
How does that expressionist influence actually show up in his work? Because his lines still look so clean compared to, say, Kirchner's aggressive, distorted figures.
It's subtle, but it's pervasive. It's primarily in the surface quality in the eyes.
Okay.
So while he keeps the manga line for the outline, the expressionist influence is clear in how he renders the background, the impasto, and most critically, the eyes and skin tones.
The colors.
The colors. He adopted their use of intense, unsettling color choices. The reds and subtle greens he uses in the shading of the children's faces. They lend them a depth and an angst they just wouldn't have with the flat, graphic colors of pure pop art or manga.
So the European training provided the psychological weight.
It made the characters feel raw and exposed.
And the expressionist impasto, those thick acrylic layers that build up the surface, that plays a huge part here too, right?
They do. Impasto is all about texture and physical presence. The layering of thick paint adds this almost sculptural quality to the canvas. By using this heavy, textured technique, reminiscent of the expressionist's raw urgency, he's literally giving the children's emotional state a physical form.
And that fusion, the heavily layered background with the flat, clean figures, is what elevates the work past simple graphic design.
Into complex painting, yes.
And it wasn't just the expressionists. Our analysis points out that his use of scale and composition seems to echo the monumental yet intimate approach of abstract expressionists like Mark Rothko.
That's a profound connection that's often overlooked. Rothko famously used these vast fields of color to create an overwhelming emotional presence.
An invitation for contemplation.
Exactly. And Nara employs a similar strategy. He often isolates his small figures in a vast, empty space, that negative space we talked about earlier, that feels both intimate, like you're catching them in a private, lonely moment.
And also imposing. Monumental.
Because they're the only visual anchor in that enormous space. That strategic isolation makes the child's scowl seem like a monumental declaration.
It's a key lesson in visual hierarchy. By controlling size and space, he heightens the emotional impact without needing any narrative clutter or background noise.
It makes the figure the sole focus of your emotional investment. Critics who saw his early German exhibitions noticed this immediately. They said his scowling children seemed to inhabit the gallery space with an uncanny authority.
Uncanny authority, I like that.
Precisely because he gave them the physical and compositional scale, usually reserved for abstract spiritual masterpieces.
And sometimes, the biggest shifts come from the smallest encounters. The source material shares this cold fact about a specific street art moment in Berlin that became a turning point for him.
Yeah, the Berlin Spark. He noticed a small, cartoonish sticker of a very simple figure placed right next to a massive, intensely political piece of graffiti.
So, innocence next to rebellion.
Right there on the street. This simple, random interplay between innocence and raw political rebellion in a public space. It just struck him. It sparked his curiosity about how those two seemingly opposite elements could coexist and comment on society in his own visual world.
Just from a sticker on a wall.
A tiny input that ignited an iconic visual strategy.
All these influences, pop art's clarity, German expressionist angst, traditional Japanese lines, street grit, Rothko scale, they all culminated in his defining hybrid visual language.
Absolutely. It's what the analysis aptly calls a visual pigeon.
A visual pigeon?
He uses thick acrylic layers reminiscent of abstract expressionist impasto for texture and depth, but he maintains the flat, clean line quality of manga figures for immediate communication.
So it's a fusion.
It is a masterclass in adaptation. He's borrowing powerful techniques from diverse global traditions without ever diluting his core identity as a Japanese artist. And that adaptability is precisely what allowed his work to resonate globally.
But the academic debate persists on this point. Does absorbing all these Western influences risk westernizing his work? Does it undermine its deep Japanese cultural context?
And that is the central question of cross-cultural art in the 21st century. One side argues that the blend strips away the unique, subtle Japanese emotional weight, making it more palatable for Western collectors.
Right.
But the more dominant view, which is supported by the work's enduring appeal in Asia, contends that this blend is precisely what makes him a global artist.
So it's not dilution, it's expansion.
Exactly. By translating his inner world into a universally legible visual grammar, he transcends geographical boundaries.
We've traced the history and the influences, but now we need to physically deconstruct the final product. That signature style, it isn't some happy accident. It's the powerful, deliberate result of that synthesis we've been talking about.
Right. Japanese pop culture provides the structure, European expressionism provides the soul, and New York street art provides the attitude.
And that coherence is achieved through these incredibly careful, often minimalist design choices. The mechanics of his characters are precise. Proportion, facial expression, that crucial negative space. It's all controlled to convey complex emotion instantly.
And the eyes are the ultimate example of this. They are so instantly recognizable, oversized, a classic manga trope, but they're absolutely essential to his appeal. They seem to look right through you.
They're a visual magnet.
A complete visual magnet. They draw you in and maximize the expressive power of the character through profound design simplicity. They communicate so much with so little.
Just a slight tilt of the head.
Or the barely perceptible angle of the pupil, the placement of that single small highlight. These micro-expressions shift the entire mood instantly, from playful boredom to intense menace or profound loneliness.
If the eyes were rendered conventionally, the effect would be totally lost.
The exaggerated size concentrates the emotional energy.
And the moods themselves, those famous scowls, are rooted in surprisingly relatable, almost absurd real-world experiences. There's a fun, lesser-known tidbit that Nara himself shared about where these expressions actually came from.
Yes, such a humanizing detail. He admitted that the scowls and sidelong glances were inspired by doodles he made while listening to particularly abrasive punk songs.
Okay, that makes sense.
Observing the raw, unfiltered emotions of his nieces and nephews, watching Stray Cats, and humorously channeling the kind you feel when someone eats your sandwich.
That's fantastic. The great master of existential angst is actually just channeling the pure frustration of lunchtime theft.
It completely grounds the work, doesn't it? It stops it from becoming too precious.
It does. It reinforces that the emotion is universal and untempered. The pure, raw anger of a child, which often feels monumental in the moment.
And that ambiguity, is it a reflection of universal childhood emotion or a personal reflection of Nara's own inner psyche? That's what makes the work so commercially viable. You're invited to project your own experience onto the character.
Which makes the connection deeply personal. And speaking purely technically, the emotional impact is dramatically enhanced by his use of color. Let's analyze that color palette, which often gets overlooked.
The color choices are a critical design element. They create visual tension. He pairs very muted, often pastel backgrounds, soft greens, dusty blues, which are generally soft and inviting.
With the sharply defined figures, which are rendered in slightly saturated, intense tones.
Exactly. So the background suggests calmness, but the figures suggest agitation.
The color contrast mirrors the emotional tension.
Precisely. They're approachable because of the soft palette, yet unsettling because of the defiant tone. Innocent in form, yet rebellious in attitude. For any designer, this is a masterclass in using contrast to control focus.
Your attention never wavers from the central figure.
It pops out from the muted surroundings with authority.
And then there's the haunting intimacy of the negative space, which is so crucial to his compositional mastery. He deliberately surrounds his figures with emptiness.
And that deliberate use of empty space serves a triple purpose. First, it makes the figure feel isolated, a child alone in a vast, undefined world. That enhances the melancholy or defiance.
Right.
Second, it makes the figure monumental, towering over you, asserting its authority. And third, and this is most important for the audience, the source material correctly compares this to minimalist branding. Less visual clutter equals more emotional clarity.
So by leaving that space empty, he forces you to project your own feelings onto the scene.
That space isn't empty. It's filled with the viewer's own emotional projection. And that creates that signature haunting intimacy.
We have to revisit the commercial crossover too, because his style is so instantly recognizable and adaptable that brands just flock to collaborate with him.
It's the ultimate collision of art and business. His visual language is clean, readable, and easy to translate onto all sorts of merchandise, apparel, lifestyle products without losing its core identity.
Because the emotion is so codified.
It works on a massive scale. But the central debate here is still relevant. Do these constant commercial collaborations dilute the work's authentic emotional resonance? Or do they just amplify its cultural reach?
Well, a small, quirky fact highlights the power of his brand mystique, regardless of what the critics think. During one fashion collaboration, a tiny sketch of a scowling child was accidentally printed upside down on a jacket, a genuine flaw.
And what was the reaction?
They didn't demand a corrected version. Collectors actually clamored for the flawed jacket.
Wow.
They argued that the mistake made the piece more authentic, a one-of-a-kind variation that guaranteed exclusivity.
And that is a profound lesson for marketing and design strategists. When a brand reaches that level of cultural mystique, the collector isn't just buying the perfect product anymore. They're buying the narrative, the unique history, the rarity. The flaw becomes a signature.
It reinforces the perceived value. Ultimately, Nara's legacy is defined by his unique ability to straddle that difficult line between high art and commerce. He blends innocence, punk rebellion, and this emotional immediacy into a form that is both highly collectible and universally relatable.
And his characters function as these instantly recognizable branding cues. But somehow, they still manage to maintain a deep artistic and emotional integrity that critics just can't ignore.
That maintenance of integrity while achieving global commercial success, that's the key to his lasting influence.
It is. Our students today don't just study his technique, they study how he managed to codify such intense, complex emotion into consistent, repeatable visual elements.
Mm.
It's a cohesive visual language few artists ever develop at this level.
And his influence has definitely permeated product design, way beyond the gallery wall. We're seeing his aesthetic shape the look and feel of consumer
Oh,
goods.
for sure. We see this influence in everything from the look of limited edition headphones and high-end skateboards to the aesthetic of minimalist, personality-driven furniture.
Right.
One designer who talked about it said Nara's work taught them how to imbue everyday objects with personality, creating an emotional bond that goes way beyond simple function. His aesthetic has become a blueprint for infusing human emotion into static design.
And he's a direct, tangible influence on the next generation of artists, both in Japan and internationally.
Many younger artists cite him as pivotal inspiration, particularly for how he combined the Japanese tradition of cuteness, kawaii, with genuine psychological subversion.
His approach to emotional duality.
That concept, that his subjects can be simultaneously vulnerable and intensely defiant, it opened entirely new avenues for visually accessible yet complex psychological narratives in contemporary art. It showed you don't need academic abstraction to convey deep meaning.
And the influence isn't just top-down, right? It inspires this grassroots, participatory creativity.
The quirky Soul Street exhibition anecdote is fantastic proof of this. Fans, completely spontaneously, created street installations mimicking Nara's faces using cardboard and recycled materials.
And it went viral.
It went viral. It proves that his aesthetic resonates so deeply that it inspires creativity outside of conventional art spaces. It shows the truly participatory nature of his influence. The people took his design and made it their own.
This all points toward a broader fundamental shift in the art world, doesn't it? The democratization of art.
Scholars strongly argue that Nara's work represents a profound move toward democratization, precisely because of its emotional clarity. You absolutely do not need an art history degree or a specific cultural background to connect with that scowling child.
Anyone can get it.
Anyone, anywhere, can instantly access that feeling of defiance, loneliness, or frustration. And that immediate relatability is an incredibly powerful agent for cultural change.
Of course, the counter-argument we mentioned is that this universality might risk oversimplifying complex artistic narratives.
That debate is ongoing, but the undeniable result is that Nara has absolutely reshaped a conversation about art's reach and purpose. His aesthetic demonstrates that creating a globally recognizable visual language isn't about originality in a vacuum. It's about synthesizing diverse, powerful influences into something coherent, emotionally engaging, and instantly identifiable.
So what does this all mean for us, the audience? We've seen how Yoshitomo Nara went from drawing punk logos in quiet Aomori to absolutely shattering auction records on the global market.
Yeah.
We can draw three core synthesized takeaways from this deep dive. First, his meteoric rise clearly illustrates the immense power of context and visibility in the contemporary world. It's that interplay between genuine artistic merit, sophisticated market machinery, and global media. That's what shapes perception and value today.
And second, technically speaking, his signature style is a testament to successful synthesis. By coherently blending these deeply disparate, often contradictory influences, manga, expressionism, punk, he forged a visual language that achieves both broad accessibility and profound psychological depth. It's a design lesson for the ages.
And third, and most enduringly, his lasting impact proves that art can and should transcend traditional boundaries. His work seamlessly influences high fashion, product design, popular culture, proving that emotional clarity and a consistent visual identity can transform artwork into a lasting, profitable, cultural touchstone.
This raises an important question, though.
Okay.
Since his signature characters are repeatedly described as capturing both intense nostalgia for a simpler, angrier time and this deep current sense of unease or displacement, we have to consider this. What specific societal desire or what deep, unresolved contemporary tension does that wide-eyed, scowling child ultimately represent for a generation of global collectors and consumers? Why, in a world desperate for comfort, are we willing to spend millions of dollars to buy into that defiant, lonely mood? That is the ultimate question his art forces us to contemplate.